Good afternoon. Today, I will be chatting with Suresh Narayanan, who is the chairman and MD of Nestle India. And Suresh, welcome. And I know that it is a frenetic and busy time for everybody at around this time of the year. And thank you for making the time.
Thank you, Rama. Thank you for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about this new world we're slipping into. I'm really confused about how much change there is and how much there isn't. There's so much hype. I think we want the world to be a place where everything is different. We want the world to be kinder. We want people to be more conscious of the environment. We want everybody to be more health conscious. We want a lot of good things to come out of this whole thing. But when I look around me, at least in my city, I am seeing that it's lots of people without masks. I'm seeing a lot of spitting back on the streets. I'm seeing everybody sort of getting back to business as usual. The traffic most certainly is back. The Belpuri Walas are back. So I was really wondering how much is changing and how much is not. And I would love to hear your view on that.
I think, Rama, what you're referring to are all manifestations of a situation that is bewildering, that is confusing, and that is probably the first time in our lives we are up against a pandemic that we are neither able to comprehend, nor able to fully absorb, nor able to react to. But having said that, I believe that it has had such a lot of impact on us, and I believe that there will be lasting impact of this pandemic. And more as a business person, I would really say that there are a couple of areas that really stand out for me in this in the whole economic and social meltdown that seems to have taken place. Firstly, for businesses, I believe the whole equation between your people, purpose, partnerships, and profit has undergone a change. I mean, the fact of the matter is that some of the old models that we looked at of increasing growth, increasing market shares, increasing profits, increasing number of partnerships and impact on people is now undergoing a change. And some of it is change for the better, some of it is permanent change. I think the whole issue around, for example, globally around diversity and talent. I mean, one of the tragedies of the pandemic has been that it seems to have impacted, at least as far as the Indian statistics goes, it seems to have impacted more women professionals and women in the workforce as a consequence of all the social and familial impacts that have taken place. On the other hand, there has also been an enormous sort of exacerbation of issues around inequality and fairness. I think the pandemic has hit hardest those who are the most economically deprived. And that means on the other side, there are a lot of people who are benefiting or probably have had less of an impact as a result of this pandemic. What that means in terms of economic, social, geopolitical equations, only time will tell. And I think the last bit, the way I see it is, and you touched upon this in your introduction, I think the whole purpose of living, why do we live? What is the end goal of our lives? What are the kind of values that we hold dear? What are the institutions that we hold dear, and which are the ones that we need to try to transform as we go forward? I think there are therefore at least 5 or 6 major themes that are coming up. Sadly, Rama, today with more questions than answers. And work from home is just one manifestation of the change that is likely to happen. But how many other changes that there are going to be in the way in which we live and work and engage ourselves in society still remains to be seen.
But Suresh, in the many, not in the many, it's been 2 quarters of meetings that I've been having. Except in some places, I'm still hearing a lot more of how do we meet our targets? Where do we meet our targets? Is our profit going to be saved? And I kind of wonder whether business is not getting it in terms of saying, I mean, why would you? I understand that business is in the business of doing well, but I'm not seeing. I'm seeing, let's go back to the targets we used to have. Are we likely to achieve it? Are we not likely to achieve it? I'm not hearing much of the fundamental purpose of the shift that you talk about again, the fundamental reshaping. So is that because it's too early, or is it that it's enlightened companies and the rest?
I think Rama, it is a bit of both. I honestly believe that if you look at the longevity of corporates, and the one that I work for, Nestle, is a very old company, 155 years old on the planet. I think companies that have had longevity typically have something in their DNA, and we espouse it as purpose. But there is a larger ecosystem to purpose that really makes them tick the way they tick. And I think that comes into play when a crisis of this sort starts to hit organizations. So I think companies with longevity, companies which have had purpose, values, culture, behaviors etched into their DNA, and companies which have always been looking at engaging the ecosystem rather than just building revenues and profits. And typically, that have also had the kind of leadership. I mean, if you look at it, Rama, honestly, the way every company is responding is not just responding to its purpose and cause, but it is also responding in terms of the quality of leadership that it enjoys. And I think many of us as leaders bring a certain individual perspective to it, our own values, our own upbringing, our own manifestation of the company purpose and values, our own understanding of what really matters at this time. And I dare say our own capability of managing ourselves as human beings directly impacts what we do as leaders. So this frenetic kind of splashing around saying, do I maximize my targets? How do I achieve the goals that I had set for myself? Probably doesn't get shouted out with a cry that says, look, at this time, it is your people, it is your ecosystems, it is compassion, it is empathy, it is reaching out that is more important than any of this, because any of this will happen if you really do all of some of the stuff that I'm talking about. So I really see this as a manifestation at three levels. One is of the central leadership of an organization. Number two is of a core purpose of an organization and how it sees itself over a period of time. And number three, finally, is that some businesses have been completely devastated. I mean, I sit on a business where we have been fortunate. I think we are lucky that we are in a business that still has a business going for it. But for many companies, it is a situation where they are stuck between a rock and a hard place. What do I do? I don't have the revenue streams to support my people. At the same time, I don't have the patience. I don't have the stomach to be kind of lasting this through for a period of time that is indeterminate. I don't even know when this is going to end. And therefore, I think all these confusions are manifesting itself. And you're finding companies and you're finding mixed voices coming out at a time of extreme distress.
But if I can just say to you that, personally speaking, Suresh, that it's okay. You sit in a company, as you yourself have said, that has actually, I mean, you and your team have actually done well. You have stayed the course. You've done well. You have been good, and you have done good, and you have been able to manage the two. Supposing you were, and this is hypothetical, and supposing you were in a situation where it really was tough going. Supposing you were in, I don't know, running a courier company or a restaurants company or something where the bottom kind of went out of it, or you were catering to construction labor or something like that, or construction companies. What would you actually think that it's okay to come out and say, yeah, I'm going to take a bigger hit than perhaps I need to on my bottom line to keep going. Or if you were in an NBFC where the moratoriums itself could possibly kill you, to say, yeah, I'm going to actually use some of my borrowings to be able to keep this ship afloat? Or does that make you less of a business leader, less hard-edged and sharp-edged for the street?
I think Rama, in a sense, we have moved on in time. I mean, if you look at the what is attributed to Milton Friedman as a maximization of the profits for the shareholder as being the single most important rationale for a business, which he espoused in the 70s, as you know, to a situation today where uh, business, society, purpose, people, partnerships, and profit are all enmeshed, and no company can really, with a straight face, say that my only purpose in business is to just keep generating profits year on year, double digit, triple digit, whatever digit I'm looking at. So I think to that extent, there is a kind of pushback that is also happening, which I believe is good, on business, saying your whole purpose is not just going to be shown in the kind of profit numbers that you generate, the kind of growth that you have, and the kind of dazzle that you do on the stock market or to the shareholders. I think this realization is also coming as far as the investing community is concerned. Honestly, if you look at it, the whole ESG theme around environment, governance, and society is and sustainability is really trying to bring to bear certain features that are not part of the unidimensional profit maximization model, and making it a little bit more all-encompassing, and making it a lot more inclusive. And I think this trend is happening, and therefore, depending on the kind of stash of cash or the kind of reserves that a company has, even if they are down and out, I believe that a leader there can, if he has got some idea of how he proposes to recover. I mean, you can't go in completely blind into a statement of this kind, but provided you have at least a few building blocks of what you will do when the business starts to come back, I believe that it is in the interest of the business itself to take a less hard-headed view and go plunge headlong into the pursuit of profits, or pursuit of whatever metric that you are measuring yourself by, and try and pause and look at the impact on your people, on your purpose, and on the partnerships that have defined your business. I just believe that it is good business sense too. You're not being altruistic. You're not sacrificing your future. In fact, you may be securing your future through a behavior of this kind. But again, it all boils down to that single word, leadership, and what that leadership is willing to stomach at that point in time.
Hmm. And so, if you look at geographies around us, where do you think is this? Where is the epicenter of this change? This change towards just less profit maximizing corporation. I mean, everyone has this sustainability report and the triple bottom line and all that. But do you think that Europe does it better? Does the US do it better? Do we? Where? No, I'm not asking you for a rating or a scoring, but where do you think? What's your sense qualitatively of how much distance we have to go towards truly being that?
Look, I think Rama, it's fair to say, and you've said it yourself in your statement. I think probably Europe and US, their realization of the societal impact of business is vastly better. I mean, I'm not just saying in terms of the various kind of reports that they are asking companies to put out. But I think the whole the shrill cry of climate change, or of inequality, or of societal goals and sustainability goals, the shrill cry is coming a lot from the West. I think, though I would have a hypothesis here that in terms of value systems, in terms of a societal understanding of what a business can do in terms of a positive impact on society, those of us from the Eastern philosophies should be able to understand this better. Because if you look at it, all our philosophies, without exception, have always talked about the inclusive nature of any activity that is done, be it social, business, educational, whatever it is. And the country that talks about Vasudeva Kutumbakam cannot be now talking about excluding parts of its own family from the impact of business. So I think we are starting that journey. We still need to accelerate, and there we probably need some champions of change, and we need to have some inspiring examples. But the West seems to be well down that path, and I guess we'll have to learn this path as we go along.
Yeah, you're right. We're actually the affiliative society. We're actually an affiliative society as compared to a more individualist one. But when it comes to business, we seem to, you're right, that some parts of us, our DNA is more affiliative. Like, for example, I mean, there are all these legendary stories of legendary Indian businessmen who knew every distributor by name, who was concerned about what happened in that family. You know, everybody swore by them, partners and vendors and distributors, because it was inclusive. But somewhere I think maybe we've kind of gone a little more in terms of what was classic Western capitalism before they changed their notion of capitalism. So maybe a little bit behind the curve. But you talk about pause, and I hear a lot of people talk about pivot. In fact, I find this word pivot and moat. These are two new words in the strategy lexicon that that continue to not puzzle me, but they continue to sometimes annoy me when they use, sometimes amuse me. Especially things like moat, which we used to call competitive advantage. And I think, have you ever seen a moat? The crocodiles in the moat, walls are sloping. Do you really have all that? So pivot is another. As a student of physics, I know that it is literally about pivoting around the center of what you actually have around the fulcrum. And pivoting is not going off into extensions, but pivoting is taking a turn, a many degree turn, 180 degree turn on where you were, but around the fulcrum of what you have. So pause or pivot, and how do you decide which is what? I mean, when to do what?
On a lighter note, Rama, since I'm neither a student of physics nor have I done my business management, I think the word moat and pivot are both a little bit away from me. And I would therefore say
our generation never learned pivot and moat. It's the new buzzwords I'm
hearing.
No,
we didn't learn it, and I guess we are the better for it, because we at least understand what the business is. The reason why I say pause, because business to me is like a flow. It is a flow across the value chain of an organization, of a system. And I think I define it as a pause because the fundamental principles of business, of engagement, of relationships, of input, output, impact, and sustainability will not dramatically change. Those principles will remain the same. But we need to pause because we need to understand now what are the changes that have taken place, which of them are going to be of a permanent nature, which of them are going to be of a transitory nature, and how do we redirect our organization, our small business, our families, our societies towards a new tomorrow that is coming out of this pandemic. And none of us knows it. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I don't think any sociologist or economist or geopolitical expert can put down saying 2021 is going to be like this. Even 2025, they will not be able to tell you. So I think to that extent, I would rather use the term pause. I think it brings in two things. One, it talks about continuity. So I'm not jettisoning anything. I'm just stopping and thinking. And secondly, I believe, Rama, one of the qualities required in business is also humility. And I think pause is humility. Pivot is confidence. Pivot says, I know exactly what is to be done. And moat is complacency, that I can keep sitting on it and say that, look, life is going to be very comfortable with me. So I would rather pause because it is humble, and pause is also inclusive, and pause also acknowledges the fact that the fundamental tenets might not have changed. They just need to be redefined.
And so while you're pausing business, what do? You plan for the future, or you're assessing, or are you just conserving? What do you do when you pause?
You do three things, Rama. Number one is you are constantly assessing, and I mean this is like trying to change the wheels of the car when the car is in motion. You don't have the luxury of saying, let me stop the business and let me see what's going to happen. So you are constantly looking through the windscreen and looking at what lies ahead and trying to read the best that you can do. The second thing that you're trying to do is to make an assessment of how prepared is my organization to meet a new tomorrow. I mean, you make all of us as business leaders, we make our own hypothesis, what's going to happen, what behaviors are going to stick, what behaviors are not going to stick. And then you look at whether you have the competency within the organization to be able to meet the requirements that you're looking at in this pause. And the third thing is, remember that a business is not about one person or two persons. It's about teams. It's about groups of people. It is about a larger ecosystem. And the most important part is to pause and assess whether your ecosystem is really prepared for the change. I mean, you have nurtured them. I have in Nestle, for example, 6,500 suppliers. I have 100,000 farmers. They've all done business with me in a particular way. That is how trust and transparency has been built over a period of time. If some of this is going to change over a period of time, I need to prepare them as well. It is as much the responsibility of the business as it is of the entity to make that change happen. And for that to happen, you have to pause. You can't suddenly start to pivot. If I start pivoting people all around, I mean, I can have a nice ballet happening, but with no concert and with no end result.
Right. I get the picture very clearly. So it appears like you are doing nothing but pausing, but what you're actually doing is looking at how to, you're trying to see how to build the future actually, or which way it may work out. But looking at consumers, I mean, I know have said that inequality is increasing. I also know that it's a challenge to figure out what is happening. But back to my point of spitting back on the street, and Bhel Puri is back on the street, and I don't know that there is necessarily such a great degree of hygiene consciousness the way it used to be. So any idea of how much change the Indian consumer is going to go through? I understand the income hit, and I think that is going to change a lot of things in the shorter term. But in the long term, if 10 is radical change and 1 is Kutte ka dom, it will always go back to the way it used to be, where would you put that number?
I would say somewhere, Rama, at this stage, safely halfway house. I don't think we will be transforming ourselves completely in terms of our aspirations, attitudes, moments of consumption, and what outcomes we expect. And I think to take your Bhel Puri example, we would still want to eat our Bhel Puri. We might want to have it on the street. We may start getting a little bit more conscious after COVID. I do hope of saying, look, do I have a clean plate, and does the guy have a clean kind of establishment to serve the product? But intrinsically, it will remain the same. Where I think the consumer will become a lot more acute will be on the trust that he puts on these brands, on the trust in brands to be doing the right thing, to be behaving in the right way, to do the right things, both as far as the consumer experience is concerned, as also the larger impact of that business is concerned. I think people are becoming increasingly more and more conscious of it. They will ask questions. I mean, you and I have daughters who are millennials. I think the kind of questions that they are asking about brands and about purpose and about what companies are doing and what they should be doing are a lot more acute than the salary designation benefits questions that we had when we started our career. And I think that's refreshing, but that will put a lot of pressure on companies to look at building trust, keeping a reputation, following a path of logical and ethical and professional outcomes as much as possible. And I think keeping an eye on the rear view mirror, because the oncoming, the traffic behind you is asking you very different questions from the traffic in front of you.
Hmm. But given that there are so given the income demographics and the amount of lower income, I mean, 33% are actually casual labor, right? And the depressing demographics of what we have. What is their manifestation in terms of flight to trust towards brands of more trust? Do you think it matters there also? Or is it always, or are we really talking about people like us?
No, I think Rama, I would submit that it'll not only it's not only people like us, but also people who are different, but who for whom the brands make the same physiological impact as it does on us. So I think to that extent, I mean, if you look at consumers seeking brands even in rural markets or in relatively less affluent markets, consumers are asking the same questions. They're asking the questions on the safety of the product. They're asking questions on is it good for me, good for my family, good for my child. I think in this pandemic, family as a unit has become
Hmm.
so much stronger. Maybe it's at one level it is a bit of a pain point for some people, saying that too much of
Hmm.
time with the family rather than the usual 6 8 hours a day. Today I have
Hmm.
24 hours with them, and that's proving to be quite a stress point. At the same time, the focus is very clearly on the family as a unit. And whether
Hmm.
I'm a guy earning 10,000 rupees a month, worried about my wife and my kid, or whether I earn 10 lakhs a month, worried about my wife and kid, I think at a visceral level, the concerns are broadly the same, except the way in which this guy expresses it could be a bit different.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think just as in the stock market, we've seen a lot of flight to safety of stocks. I think the same way we are seeing a little bit of a flight to safety of brands, which is quite interesting. I also think that somewhere, I sometimes think that maybe we've gone 10 years back in time on certain issues, like, for example, on this individual affiliative dimension, like you're talking about, that it's back to worrying about my parents. Whereas earlier it was that was a little bit decreased, but now we're back to worrying about parents, worrying about extended family, worrying about understanding how the ecosystem can actually shape us, worrying about people who work for us at home. So in some ways, things that had, if I may say so, that had become somewhat unfashionable over time. I think I'm seeing it even in the younger generation going back in that direction, which is
Yeah.
quite interesting. So let's talk about this, like pivot and moat. I think there's a third one that has burst upon us, and it is called purpose. You yourself have used purpose. I hear a lot of people using purpose, but I just want to be absolutely, I want to explore, what does it mean? I mean, where is the lip service and where is the real service to purpose? I mean, when you say, what does delivering on purpose mean? What does living up to purpose mean? And finally, I also want to know, there are obviously costs involved, right? We say segmentation is sacrifice. So I presume purpose comes with a price. So what is real purpose? What is lip service purpose? And particularly since this is a community that we're talking to, the PR community that is propagating that purpose in simple terms, or not in simple terms, in truthful terms, what is purpose?
Look, I think for me, purpose is as simple as defining your reason to be. Uh, whatever you're doing, unfortunately, lip service purpose is those nice, grandiose statements that you put outside in your reception for people to read and admire the sleight of hand or the nuance of the English language. But true purpose is really what is your reason to be. I mean, there is a Japanese word for it called ikigai, which is the reason
Yes.
to be. And in a sense, it is that reason to be. What is it? It's not a flowery statement, or it is not something that should make you weep every time you read it, or swoon with ecstasy because it sounds so good and so great. But it is what your reason to be is. I mean, if you look at ours, for example, it is we unlock the power of food to enhance the quality of life for people now, for people today, for everyone, and for generations to come. So therefore, it is simply around that area of unlocking the power of food. Now, It is not meant to kind of evoke more emotions than that, but it kind of gets you into a path. It gets you purpose seen together with a core set of values, defines for me the kind of center and the boundaries for what a company operates with. The reason for getting back to purpose is because every now and then during a crisis, people can each person in the organization can have their own interpretation of what this company stands for. And I think that is the task of leadership and of the core team, to get the people gently but very definitively saying that this is what our company stands for. This is what we mean by saying what we do as a purpose. It is enshrined also in terms of certain values that we follow, certain cultural principles that we follow, certain codes of behavior that we follow. And in some sense, that then gives a kind of a guiding path in a very difficult situation. I mean, I've seen this when I was, during the Maggie crisis. I was seen this subsequently during various other crises. I honestly believe, Rama, this is just a kind of a guiding star for the company to say this is what we do as a business. It is not meant to be any more than that. It is not expected to make my hair stand on ends or make me kind of open my eyes more than I do. It is just for me to understand what is it that is at the core of my organization. And I believe if we do this well, and if we follow this path well, linking the purpose to values, to culture, to behaviors, to outcomes, then you find this working well, and it helps you, because then you don't have to bark out every instruction, and you don't have to act out every part of the play for the theater to happen. I mean, when there is a salesman of mine in Sikkim who walks for 3 days at a stretch, 14 kilometers a day to get the permission to start the distribution when the lockdown opened, that is an example of his understanding of what the purpose of this company was and what values this company is enshrined in. And I didn't have to, and I can say this very clearly. I didn't have to call up anybody there and saying, look, why aren't we starting it? Why aren't we doing it? It is that unspoken language that happens when people understand purpose, values, culture, and behaviors, and put that together in a context. And I think this context, the pandemic context, is even more important, because many times you don't know what tomorrow is going to be. And your tomorrow here in Gurugram is not the same tomorrow as for you in Mumbai, or for any of my colleagues in a different part of India.
So it's more than the mission that we used to talk about once upon a time?
Yes, most certainly. I mean, I think it is a well crafted purpose. Just gives very telegraphically what your company is in the business of, or is seeking to do. Mission and a vision and various other statements that have been put together, I believe, are a little bit more elaborate. Some of them sometimes don't even make much sense because they are so short term. But I think a simple, straightforward purpose statement at least gives you, it's like a human purpose. I mean, it's like, Rama, what do you stand for as a human being? What do I stand for as a human being? Every now and then we look at ourselves, either in prayer or in reflection, saying, what am I doing with my life? And I think what am I doing with my life is preceded by the question, what was I supposed to do with my life? And I think to that extent, it's the same for a corporation.
So it is surprising how many companies actually, if you look at their vision, mission statements, and so on and so forth, don't even have the word, don't even have any idea of what it does for the customer, because it's all about look at me and see how wonderful I am. I teach a course at IIM Ahmedabad called Customer-Based Business Strategy with my teacher, Professor Jain, who's always asking it's not what the customer is doing for you, but what do you do? So it's always, I want to delight customers. I want to be the biggest. I want to be the best. I want to be the highest in market cap. I want to have performance with profit. So it's a long journey then from a lot of the garden variety. I mean, even if you take one of our favorite things is to actually take a section of annual reports and then start putting them together. And then you find that the idea of what am I doing for somebody else is actually absent. So from there to go to genuine purpose, the way you describe it, I think we have a lot of work cut out for us in terms of making that transition again here, isn't it? And I think we should kind of make sure that the word doesn't run away with us, right?
No, absolutely, Rama. I think the simpler, the clearer, the pithier we are, the better it is. And I always say that insecurity is loud, strength is silent. So I
Yes.
think if you're insecure, you have to say in 200 words what you mean.
Yes.
But if you're strong,
Yeah.
5 words can say it.
But does purpose come with a price if you are obeying your purpose?
Definitely, Rama. Purpose comes with a price because it tags on to it certain set of values, behaviors, and outcomes that are corollaries of the purpose that you have set for yourself. So therefore, some of the short-termism or some of the walking away from the purpose or kind of giving a nod and a wink doesn't happen if you are really serious about your purpose. So I think it can be a very good kind of check back to the leadership in an organization, saying, "Look, guys," and it's almost like having your granddad's picture in the living room. That every time you want to try some tricks, you look at that picture and the stern man on that photo, and then you say, "Look, I'm not going to try this trick because this man didn't stand for it." So it's the same. I think it's in some sense, it's in some sense it is the same for a corporation. I mean, I don't have to look at Henri Nestle's picture, but when I look at what a serious stern face he has, I know that he talked about a serious business in life, and he wasn't kind of joking about it.
Hmm. So I guess even the PR community that we are talking to should be questioning whether when a company says go and propagate my purpose, should actually work with the company to understand the depth of it and to try and actually show people the depth that is really there in terms of delivering it, living up to it, signaling it, and so on.
Sure.
But
No, I really see that as, for a PR company, I think I call it what I call the 60 strategy, which is really number one is to build trust. Number two is to build transparency. Number three is to look across the entire value chain, the total value chain of the company. Number four is transmission. And transmission means not only what to say, but also what not to say. I think the PR company or the PR expert should be able to say, look, this kind of communication is not for you. You don't have this credibility, you don't have this trust, you don't have this transparency to be talking about it. Number five is team based. It has to be across the team that represents the company, not just a group of people. And number six is transcending time. So irrespective of whether I'm 100 years old or 200 years old, the taste and flavor of the organization needs to remain the same, even though the packaging and the brand kind of lettering might be slightly different, but everything else must remain the same.
the soul has to be there. So then I guess for PR companies as well, they must have a purpose, right? That they themselves must have a purpose in terms of what it is that they are trying to create when they're managing reputations, building reputations. So you have to think much more deeply than just taking, as we say, the client's brief and setting it to music.
No, absolutely. I mean, I really I see the role of the PR company in not just being an executor of the will of the leadership of the organization. If they're really doing their job, they have to be the conscience keeper, and they have to be the mirror to the organization. They should be capable of, if it's a really good relationship, it's like a relationship that you have with an advertising agency at some stage, may not be as acute. But when you're really endorsing a terrible communication strategy or approving a terrible storyboard, then the agency should be capable of putting up the mirror to you saying, look, this one doesn't really seem to work with all the tweaks that you're suggesting. It's the same with the PR agency. To say, look, this line of logic that you're using, or this framework of referencing a particular issue that you have, is going to boomerang on you in a couple of spots. And have the courage to be able to say this with conviction to the management is what makes you pay money to that PR agency. To say what you want to, and to say it exactly the way you wanted to say it, I mean, that can be done by anybody. You don't need a good PR agency for that.
So then they should also be auditing is perhaps the wrong word, but they should also be inspecting a lot more, getting involved a little more with the insides of the company to see whether purpose is being delivered or not being delivered before you go out to propagate the purpose, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think if the PR agency is worth its salt and stands up to the test of time, they should be in a position to see the inner workings of a company, and to really understand, the PR company is a little bit like a cardiologist. I should be able to take your corporate ECG and be able to tell you that, look, you're okay, you're in good health, or my friend, there are a couple of spots that might come to hit you. Yeah.
Cholesterol blockages in your delivery of purpose. I think that's a really good analogy and a really good note to end on. My favorite line is also from a book I once read that said, this woman was really troubled and she went to her grandfather and she said, what should I do? And he looked at her and said, if you know what you want to be, you will know what you want to do. And yes. I think that is actually so nice, because there are much fewer doubts on a occasion to occasion basis at every decision crossroad if you broadly know what you want to be. And I think that makes for the CEO to sleep easier, the PR agency to sleep easier, and get on from there.
No, absolutely. I think every CEO, every leader, always needs not only the voice from within, which is his own people, but the voice from outside. And typically, in a difficult environment, in a troubled environment, where tempers are frayed, where social conversations are shrill, where the political, legal, economic environment is stressed and strained, you need an outside voice to help you to navigate and say, look, these are the kind of issues and themes that make sense for you, and these are the ones that are taboo. So please don't touch it, even if you think that they are very relevant. You may have mud on your face.
Right. I think that's a very good point. So Suresh, thank you very much. As always, it's fun chatting with you. It's illuminating chatting with you. It's I always go back every time I chat with you, just that much taller, because I just feel that much more exercised and energized. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Rama. Thank you very much. Likewise, it was always a real pleasure chatting with you. I come out very refreshed, because I always find your views sometimes contrarian, but when I go back and think about it, I always say that, yeah, I think Rama had a point. So thank you very much for having me on this program today. Thank you.
Thank you.